Today, I'm very happy to talk to you about critical skill, critical minds, and aesthetic AI. But before, I have a question, or actually two questions for you, and I hope you can help me. In the chat, there is a link to a Google Doc. You should be able to access it without any sign up. And in that Google Sheet, where I will have a few more questions over the session, I would like you to answer the question, what excites you most about generative AI? So in the Excel, you will find a column with your name. If you want to write it, you don't need to. And then the question, what excites you most about generative AI? You pick a line. If you put a fake name, that's okay. It's easier to see, to have an idea what belongs to who. I'll give you a few more minutes.
Gibt es Einwände gegen die als sicherheitsrelevant eingestuften Dienste, die wir hier vorfinden?
Now, if you already have your answer, what excites you most about generative AI, I'm curious to know also what worries you most about generative AI, and you have the question in column C in the same Google Sheet. I see hype, de-skilling, deepfake, over-reliance, provision of wrong information, anthropomorphization, loss of critical thinking. And on the other side, on the positive side, we had possibilities of teaching well at scale, speed of text generation, potential for learning. On the positive, skeptical. Then dynamic development, the ability to see patterns too big to see individually, potential to combine more information, collaboration, extension of perspectives, potential to better support diverse learning groups. Interesting. Thank you for answering. Now, relatively the same two questions were asked by Anthropic, which is the mother company of Claude. In December 2025, they carried out a research with more than 80,000 people, asking them what they want from AI. And on the positive side, they were excited about the people answering, the participants answering were excited about the professional excellence, the personal transformation that generative AI is allowing, life management, time freedom, and these four are above 10% of the mentions. So each of them had more than 10%. Now, on the other side, what worries you about generative AI, we have unreliability, jobs and economy, autonomy and agency, cognitive atrophy, governance, misinformation, surveillance and privacy, malicious use, meaning and creativity, over-restriction, well-being and dependency, sycophancy. And all of this that I mentioned, so 12 12 aspects, have been mentioned by at least 10% of the participants. So the list is a lot longer with what is scaring us. And actually, further, I will talk about the first one mentioned that I also see in the answer you gave to my earlier question. Unreliability. What does unreliability means? Well, it's related to the idea of hallucinations, a confident response that may sound plausible, but is either factually incorrect, nonsensical, or inconsistent with no information. You all heard and you all know about hallucinations. Some don't agree to this term because it's too connected to human experience and are using something like confabulation. However, for the sake of easy understanding, this is the term that is predominantly used. A few examples, I'd say funny ones. If your cheese doesn't stick to the pizza, the AI is recommending to add an 1/8 cup of non-toxic glue to the sauce in order to give it more tackiness. If you're curious how many hours we plot revenge, well, according to the AI, 80% of our waking time we plot revenge, and this is based on a study carried out in 2013. If you ask how many rocks I should eat, the AI says that at least one small rock per day, according to UC Berkeley geologist, is a good thing. So while all these answers are funny, they are easy to spot because we definitely know the right answer to those questions. And the biggest risk with AI when is hallucinating has to do with juniors that actually don't have enough experience, don't have enough knowledge in order to catch those hallucinations. The examples that you see here are from 2024. This is another funny one this year. I found that on a social media platform, if you use the prompt, maybe it still works at this point. If you use the prompt, I need to wash my car. There are 50 meters to the car wash. Would it be better to walk there? ChatGPT in February said it's only 50 meters to the car wash and walking is definitely the better option. So you see another example. Now, the companies that are behind these large language models, these chatbots, are working on improving the algorithm every time, and they are correcting. So, for example, now probably if you go and ask, should I eat a rock a day? The answer has been changed to correspond to what is actually true. Don't eat rocks. Now, that's one side. We have AI hallucinations, and we don't exactly know when they occur, when we don't have the knowledge and the experience. On the other side, we have a widespread or spreading use of generative AI. And according to Eurostat, 60% of the young people aged 16 to 24 in the EU used generative AI in 2025. And another study in UK talked about the generative AI user being near universal. 95% of the students report using AI at least in one way. 94% used it in assessed work. And when working with my students, I also expect and I kind of encourage them to use AI. And this is what's bringing me to the topics we talk about, or I want to talk about today. Class exercise for testing students' critical thinking in relation to generative AI, shifting focus from visual output and then bridging the AI efficiency and academic integrity. Let's start with the exercise. Now, in the chat, not in the chat, but give me a second. If you go to the Google Sheet where you answered my questions earlier, and you click resources, share this tab. So first, you are in questions, and now if you go to resources, you will find a link to this exercise that I'm going to present to you. You can take a moment to look around. Basically, the exercise is about giving students the structure that I asked for in a presentation, and asking them to evaluate the presentation. There is a link to the slides, to the presentation. If you're ready, can you give a thumbs up in the chat? If you had a look there, you can also answer if you're curious to see what's next. Thank you, Ivana. Leonie. Bettina. Thank you. Waiting for a bit more. Lisa. Joanna. Clifford, Melanie. Frederica. Lucas. And now there are some more. Okay, I see that most of you have had a look at this exercise, and you have an idea what it does, or what's the idea behind. Now, how do you think the students answered? So this is a snapshot from the presentation, if you didn't click. And the task was for them to assign a score from 0 to 100, 100 being a maximum, to this presentation, given a specific structure. How do you think they answered? Maybe in the chat? A few comments?
Genau, wir gucken nochmal auf die SSD-Dienste, ob das Vorschlag
Positively. 90 out of 100. Yeah, both of the answers are true. 80, 90. Yep. That's right. So they perceived this presentation quite positively. So I had 55 students that I asked, some of them in 2025, some of them this year. The minimum they gave was 55 points, maximum 100 points, and on average, they gave 80 points, 100% pass. Now, you probably got the gist. My evaluation is far from passing. I always told them I'm giving 10 points out of 100 for this presentation because of the energy used. And the students are puzzled. Why? Why just 10 out of 100? It has the required structure, it has a clean layout, it has citation, it has high resolution imagery. Also, they look nice and consistent. So why just 10 out of 100? It looks beautiful. But then together we scroll to the end of the presentation, and I start to click the references, and several open 404 pages or unrelated pages. And what does that mean? Are the references genuine? Is the information cited accurate? Which information is real? Which is fabricated? How much is real and how much is false? And this brings us to this bias, aesthetic bias, that it doesn't, so it applies to all human beings, not only to students. We are all prone to it. It actually states that the product is perceived as easier to use when it's visually attractive. So this is what happens with students. They see a presentation that looks professional and they assume that everything there is correct. This bias is actually part of a broader cognitive bias called halo effect, according to which a single positive trait, such as physical beauty, influences the overall perception of a person or an object, leading to the assumption of other unrelated positive attributes. For example, in the case of the presentation, we see presentation is beautiful, clean layout, consistent pleasing imagery, has citation, all looks nice. And since all looks nice, quite exquisite and very well organized, then we assume, we infer that the presenter must be an expert and the data must be flawless. However, given we already talked about AI hallucinations, that's not the case with the content that the AI produces. And I showed the example with the presentation, but the same is true for any type of document, a report or an essay. The grammar is flawless, the vocabulary is sophisticated, the formatting is spot on, the tone is professional. And since everything looks like a high-level professional document, the data must be verified and the logic of the author must be sound. This is the halo effect in practice. So we have the aesthetic bias, and we can talk about aesthetic AI. AI that produces instantly stunning visuals, persuasive ideas, polished outputs. And AI is exceptionally good in first impression. And you probably noticed when you are a senior, when you know what's about in the domain you are working, you are in a better position to notice when the AI is making is coming up with fake information. But coming back to students, they don't have yet that knowledge and that experience in order to be able to step back. And sometimes I must say that I also fall into this trap of aesthetic bias, because the results from AI do sound convincing. So before generative AI, we had polished work that required expertise. Now that we can use generative AI, the polished work is a result of good prompting. So visual quality before used to be an imperfect but useful signal. And today, this aesthetic perfection is actually decoupled from human effort. We cannot infer that there is effort behind a good-looking presentation or a good-looking report. Furthermore, LLMs, large language models, are trained to be helpful and assertive. They rarely use phrases such as, I guess, I'm not sure, I didn't find the data. Why? Because this is how they are trained, actually, to give an answer, no matter what. They are rewarded to give an answer and not to say that that there is no data to build on. So generally, AI answers sound so confident that we instantly think the answers must come from an expert on the topic. That's the idea of aesthetic AI. And this is research carried out in 2025 by Toe Center. They asked several generative AI tools to identify the source of an article, the publication, and the URL for 200 excerpts. And while a normal search on Google, for example, or on Bing would yield the correct result, this is the distribution of the answers received from AI. Some were correct completely or partially, but many were incorrect. The red part there represents partially incorrect or completely incorrect. So the study showed that the AI retrieving data was wrong more than 60% of the time, and it actually delivered those errors with a lot of confidence, as I said, because of the training. Above, you see how many answers were given with confidence, and below, how many times AI actually said, oh, I don't know exactly what's happening there. So given this context, we should focus more on shifting our focus from the visual output to be trained to pause, although it looks good, to not assume that it's actually of quality, to resist the bias of, to resist the aesthetic bias. So now I'm curious. I have one more question for you. If students can generate polished work in minutes, what evidence would convince you that genuine learning occurred? And to answer this question, please go again to the Google Sheet that I shared earlier. In the first tab, questions, in column D, you find exactly this question.
Ja, ich wollte den anderen Bildschirm. Also die Tagesordnung.
Waiting a bit. For you to gather your thoughts, write your answers. You can also have a look at what your colleagues have said.
Also, ich sag mal ganz ehrlich, ich habe jetzt keine besonders wohlfeile Überlegung hinsichtlich der
I see knowledge transfer, abstraction, generating examples. They need to defend, critique the work of others, presentation without PowerPoint. I must say I like PowerPoints. They help me structure my ideas and keep the flow. Texts that reflect on a learning process, defending, explain the process, explain in details, come up with their own questions, critical questions, when they can talk about it. So we are talking about a shift. Before the existence of generative AI, we had, let's say, the access to information wasn't that easy. That was an important part of our learning process. Finding answers, memorizing and producing content were also important aspects. However, today we are in an abundance of information. We have information, we are surrounded, bombarded. So it's more important to be able to evaluate answers, to exercise our judgment and to assess the content. So one idea would be maybe to give more prominence to, in our criteria of evaluations, to evidence quality, source diversity, claims checked, references validated. And the general idea out there that I heard from many sources is that we shouldn't focus anymore on output, but we should look at behavior or process, try to assess and see how the behavior changed, how the process, what the process that the students go through evolved. One framework from Dr. Philippa Hartmann has 3 steps. First, writing the learning outcomes as observable verbs. Then asking yourself, if you could follow, what would you follow up on? And then have students defend. And not only in the traditional manner in which when you have classes of 100 students, it's hard to scale, but using actually AI voice agents. And I will share the link to the article if you want to read more about this approach. My approach is a bit more simple. I started to ask my students to have clickable citations in text and at the end. And I give them an examples how a report should look like, and I give them an example how a slide in a presentation should look like. And then in order to be more convincing, I also tell them if their report or presentation don't have in-text clickable citations and end-of-list clickable references, then their work automatically fails, no matter how good it looks. So bridging the AI efficiency and the academic integrity is the last part of my quick talk today. So on one side, we have speed, convenience, productivity, polished output, very hard to resist. So we won't stop using AI. But on the other side, we have academic integrity, and we must look and emphasize responsibilities, looking for evidence, transparency, and accountability. And on this side, I share with students tools for research, so bots that are specifically designed for or are based on scientific papers, not general chatbots. Most of them are getting their information from 3 big databases: Scopus, 90 million data records; Semantic Scholar, more than 200 million data records; and OpenAlex, 250 million. Then I also talk to them about prompting techniques, role, task, format, and you're probably familiar. This is only one example. And then in terms of workflow, to look through go through several layers. First verification, is it true? Interpretation, what assumptions are hidden? Perspective, who benefits from this view? Who's missing from this data? Wisdom, what should be done? But before any of this, maybe the first one that I recommend is to use the mind first before getting the AI results, so that we don't end up with cognitive atrophy. So we talked about the class exercise, what it means to shift the visual output and to bridge AI efficiency and academic integrity. Takeaway: teach students to discern, question, and wisely use information with some questions that you see now on the slide. Is it true? How do I know? What is missing? What evidence? What assumptions? What are the second-order consequences? Last minute to wrap it up. Special thanks to the people who made and released awesome resources for free. The template is from Slides Carnival. Photographs are from Google Images. And actually, the slides from the exercise are made with free credits on Gamma app. And if you're interested to collaborate, these are a few ideas. At the beginning of December, you can participate in International Week Teaching and Training at Esslingen University. This week, European Digital Education Hub is organizing a webinar on teacher professional development in the age of AI. And me, together with my colleagues, we are running research on generative AI in education. If you're interested, reach out. All this information and some other resources you find in the Google Sheet that I shared earlier. So you have questions, and then on the second part, you have resources. And that was it. Thank you.